Hi, good morning. Antariksha AntiDigest work from home. When I started making this YouTube channel, I looked for the cheapest way to make and edit videos. I own a MacBook Pro, so I realized with some research that iMovie is the best editor that you can actually use for movie making on MacBook Pro. So, started using the iMovie software. It's actually super good, which we can take up in another video sometime later. Some context about my MacBook Pro. It has 128 GB of space, 128 GB of space, which means the pre-installed SSD comes with 128 gigs. Of that, usually the OS takes about 30 GB of space, which means I'm only left with somewhere around 90 to 100 GB. With time, your system will start accruing cache memory. Cache memory goes up to 50 gigs, which means you're left with 30 to 40 GB to work with. You will have documents, you will have other material that you require to be on your laptop, which means you're just left with 10-20 gigs to play around with. When I first started using iMovie, I had about 30 GB of space. With time and with growing cache in my MacBook Pro, I realized that the system starts hanging. And since the system starts hanging, I researched and I found out that I need more space with my MacBook Pro. That made me come up with two options. Just buy a new MacBook Pro, or buy a new SSD which has more space, install macOS on it, and replace the old one with the new one. Either $1,500 to $2,000 on a new MacBook Pro, or $100 to $150 on replacing the SSD. Considering the amount of money I make from YouTube videos, I think the $100 to $150 was a good option. Replacing a SSD is an option not just for me, who's been using a MacBook Pro for about 5 years now, but also for people who are buying a MacBook Pro with low storage space so that they can spend less money in upgrading the storage. Today you can upgrade your storage space from 128 GB if you buy a 128 GB MacBook Pro to about 1 to 2 TB in less than $300. So, what would be the steps that I would need to take to replace the current SSD to a new one? Number one, obviously buy a new SSD. I bought the SN550 from WD Western Digital. I went for that because if you buy it if you bought it at the same time as me from the Western Digital website, you got a cruiser blade SanDisk about 30 GB in size, 32 GB in size for free, which basically can install your MacBook Pro from the current SSD to the new SSD, and you don't need any extra material for it. After the SSD arrives and the SanDisk cruiser blade, obviously pen drive arrives, you will need to do a couple of steps to create a bootable installed disk on your cruiser blade. That brings me to the next step. Step number 2, create a bootable disk. Apple support has a very detailed set of instructions to how to create a bootable disk for your macOS. The link to which I'll put in the description below. But basically, a couple of things that you'll have to decide first is what Mac OS do you want to install on your system. I picked the latest version that I had that was currently available, which is Catalina. I think it is as good as any, but you can pick your pick. Only as far as El Capitan is available, which is about 5 years to 6 years ago, so I think you should be good with whatever OS you want to pick. Once you pick what OS you want to install, just search for it in the App Store, do a get or a download, and once it downloads, you'll see a install macOS or whatever Mac. For me, I installed Catalina, so macOS Catalina window pop up. Basically, you can go through the UI and work with it, or you can just do it through the terminal. Again, those instructions are available on Mac OS, how to create a bootable Mac OS drive. So you should be good with that. For me, however many times I tried it with the UI, it just didn't seem to work. So I had to switch to using the terminal command. Now to getting the bootable disk ready. You will have to format the disk to the macOS disk format using this utility. As you can see, I've selected the macOS extended journaled format. You may be presented with other format, but I would just recommend using the macOS journaled. Sometimes it may also ask you for a partition scheme. If it does, use the GUID partition scheme. You can also set your own name for the disk. Once you're done and you select erase, it'll take a while to erase the disk and then set it to the proper working format that you just requested for. Once it's done, you just run the create bootable media disk command on the terminal. Here I've shown it to you 20x. I think it takes about 10 to 15 minutes to get this over with, so you'll have to wait for a bit. But once this is done, you should be good to go with the next step. The next step would be replacing the SSD. For that, you turn over your Mac and start unscrewing. As a disclaimer, and before you actually replace your SSD, I want you to know that I am not in any way licensed to be teaching anyone to do this, and I am just trying a new thing which I am sharing with you. In the future, if something goes wrong with you or your MacBook Pro, I am not in any way liable. Having said that, this method should work for almost all MacBook Pros after 2012. Mine specifically is an early 2015 A1502 MacBook Pro. Oh, and another piece of really important information, the screw bit that I'm using to unscrew here is a P5, the link to which I've put in the description below. Once you're done unscrewing, the bottom plate just comes off as is. Look at how beautiful that looks. I've made a red box for you to be able to recognize where the SSD is. If you look closely, you'll see there's a head and tail to that SSD. Now we'll unscrew the SSD out of its place. Basically, you'll have to use a T5 type of screw bit to unscrew it, and it very easily can be pulled out of its place. I'll now pull out the new SSD and compare it with the one that we just pulled out. The new SSD is visibly smaller than the old one, and at the same time it has a different pin structure, so this directly will not fit. Fortunately, I had already researched that, and I had found out that you always need an extension to get it attached to the MacBook Pro slot. And again, I'll put the link to it in the description below. Once you attach the adapter properly, you should be able to see that the lengths of the new and the old SSDs start matching, and you can just take the new SSD and pop it into place. When you're putting it back, you'll have to push it enough to hear a final click. Once you hear that click, the SSD should be in place and you should be able to screw it smoothly. If you're not able to put the screw in, then the SSD can be pushed further in. When in place, you should be good to screw it back in. Now you can assemble the MacBook Pro back. There's a tiny trick when you're assembling it back. There are two types of screws, as you can see in the picture shown. One of them is a bit smaller than the other, which go in the two places that I'm showing you in the picture. So take care of that and you should be good to go with screwing. Again with the P5 screw, which I put in the description below. Next we move on to the final step of the process, installing macOS on the SSD. For that, you will need to press the power button and right after, long press the Alt or the Option key. Once you do that, this screen will pop up. It gives you basically the option to install the macOS. It will say install macOS Catalina, and it also gives you an option to select the network and connect to the network. It's definitely a good to have if you're able to connect to the network. If you're not, that's okay too. I don't think it requires the network connection, so I just did it without the network connection. Again, I kind of 20x'd this part, so it does take a while to get started. When it does, it'll open the screen, and it should be pretty easy for you to follow the steps along on the screen and install macOS. You do have to be careful to select the disk that you want to install on. It will be the internal disk and it will have the proper name. You may need to reformat it or erase it, which Mac will give you an option to do, or the UI will give you an option to do. But once you're done with that, you should be good to go for installing the Mac. So the last part of that video ends at 5 minutes remaining because the battery of my phone actually ran out. But that's pretty much it. You'll have to buy an SSD, create a bootable disk, replace the old SSD with the new SSD, and finally install macOS on the new SSD. Those are the 4 steps you'll need to take to upgrade your SSD. This video, all of this, the YouTube video that I created, was developed on the new SSD. I'm not sure if I've tested it enough to say that it doesn't hang much. I think I should give me enough time to get used to the new SSD. I believe I've seen an improvement, at least in copy pasting things. I did have to reinstall everything, so that's kind of a pain, but that was a one-time pain and I think I was ready to do that. But once that was done, I've had a pretty smooth experience with the SSD so far. The SSD also claims to almost double the speed of read and write with respect to the one that's already on, that was already on my MacBook Pro. I've not seen that kind of change. Maybe it's because of different SSD that MacBook or Mac Apple does not optimize. And I would definitely recommend it to everyone if they wanted to go for it. Along the lines of the YouTube channel, I recently found out today that I got a copyright claim on one of the songs that I did. I am very new to the YouTube world, so I'm not sure what to do with the copyright claim. It's a song cover. I believe it should be allowed. I have to actually learn more to see what copyright claim actually means and how to do song covers the legal way. And I would definitely not want to produce another song video before I do that. I will definitely try to come up with something or the other by the end of this month. I would ask you to like the video if you like the content. Definitely subscribe if you watched my other videos and you like them as well. And if you want to watch new videos upcoming every start and mid of the month. If you have any suggestions, please put in the comment below. Thank you again for watching and have a good day.